We just want to say a few words about what's going on in Colorado. You know, I guess I have a personal passion for this. My first job in arts administration in 1973 was in New Haven, and two members of our board, an architect and the head of city planning, were drinking buddies, and they had this idea that a 2-block stretch called Audubon Street that had nothing on it but parking lots, an abandoned synagogue at one end and an abandoned foundry at the other end could be brought back to life through the arts. And it was a big vision. And I went there a couple of years ago, and everything that they dreamed of came true. I guess that's you go there and there's housing, there's retail, there's an amazing bunch of restaurants and the Magnet School for the Arts, a multi-purpose arts incubator building, condos, beautiful architecture and landscape architecture, and the place is just full of life. And so there's my pitch for sustainability really does work, and 30 years later that place is awesome. So this is passion for me, and what you people are doing is just so extraordinary, bringing cities to life through the arts. So I just want to say a few things about what's going on in Colorado. Some years ago, Colorado Creative Industries did a study, or commissioned a study, that showed that the creative cluster was the 5th largest in Colorado, which was huge. And in some of the post-study discussions, okay, now what do we do? The thought was to consider legislation encouraging creative districts, and House Bill 11-1031 that Ginger mentioned was the result, which encouraged the formation of creative districts by local governments and through a partnership mechanism to do those things. Build capital, economic and civic, a hub of vitality, enhancing tourism, reusing, beautifying, preserving, celebrating unique identity. So these were the goals that were to happen. So, and next slide, please. Colorado Creative Industries, was charged in the legislation with doing two things. First, about figuring out what a certifiable district actually meant, because the legislation was a little vague on that, and then certifying districts. And so that was done, and we wrote guidelines. Ginger and I actually wrote the guidelines that were accepted. And the other thing that the legislation said is that we were supposed to offer, quote, a helping hand to any community that might want to create a creative district. And you'll hear more about that from Jamie in a second. Elaine and I took a bet. One of us thought we would have 7 applications, and one of us thought we would have 10. And in fact, we got almost 50 from 24 counties. That's, with 64 counties in the state, many of which are very empty places, this was amazing. So there was something in the water. Next slide, please. When we got the applications, we had said there were some things that we were going to use as our guideposts in actually certifying the communities. 35% of people's score had to do with simply the characteristics of the area. What was in the map of its district boundaries? What was the density of cultural activity? Were there festivals? Were there artists? Was there a brand that could be, was already being used or could be used to attract more people there? 35% was on management and planning. What was the partnership that was essential? I mean, Jason was talking about partnerships, you bet. That's the key of making something work. The artists, the other creative businesses, the for-profit auto mechanic whose business is next door to a gallery, the residents, all of them talking together about what could be and how to think about sustaining this idea all over time and where they might get some money to do that. Is this in their thinking? The final piece of it, big piece of it, was the buy-in from the community. Was that auto mechanic really in favor of it? Was he or she just pushing this? Were the residents in the condos and the apartments who lived there, were they involved in the planning, and was there artists in the leadership cluster? And finally, we had other things that we wanted to value, like were kids involved, were there public gathering spaces, and so forth. So with that to guide us, we certified, as Ginger mentioned, 2 districts in Colorado. We also identified 13 that were that close. And we thought we'll work with that group of communities for 2 years, giving them as many tools as we can so that they could be certified in the near future. And then the next slide. We've given them, in the helping hand, included things like convenings and meetings, access to technology, purchasing of software, purchasing of books, network opportunities, opportunities to get discounts to other conferences and materials that would be just helpful to them, as well as a cadre of people who are consultants, many of whom are in this room, and we promised 60 hours that we would pay for of consulting time in anything from wayfinding, signage, planning, to mapping, to strategic planning, you name it. So what's going to happen next is that in this spring, from the pool of 13, we'll certify up to 5. And then the next open application for anybody in the state will be in the winter of 2014. Take it away, Jamie. What's happening meanwhile?
All right, so I joined Ginger and Maryo on the State Creative Districts program just a few months ago. And when I sat down with them to talk about how I could get involved, they said, well, we've had the excitement of naming the creative districts, and there's been a lot of buzz around getting the designation, but there's sort of a big now what. And so we've been working over the past several months to answer the question of now what, which really goes back to what the districts need to succeed going forward, to provide assistance and training and support to really build capacity and sustainability, because that's the hardest part for some of these districts is where's the money, where's the organizational structure, where's our plan, how do we do that? So figuring out how to provide structure to that and to assist the existing districts also meet legislative requirements around things like data and figuring out their cultural heritage, as well as to help educate and inform other districts out there, because I go to state meetings all over the state, and I always ask who is a creative district. A few hands go up. Who wants to be a creative district? Everybody's hands go up. So it's a very popular program, which is great. So we want to sustain that. So we just announced earlier this afternoon to all the creative districts that we're really excited about some trainings that we're going to be rolling out this year and some new partnerships we developed to, again, go back to that question of how do we build capacity and sustainability. And really, this is these list of trainings here are around understanding what it takes to manage a place. And it's not just always as easy as throwing a great event or having a great logo, but building on those things. So understanding your assets, defining your niche, what makes you different and special, really building a strong cultural brand and carrying that through in all that you do, figuring out your market, creating a great plan and a strategy to get there. I've been working with Art District on Santa Fe and Rhino here in Denver this last year, and both finishing up 5-year strategic plans that are very bold about what they want to do and where they want to go with their districts. And then creating a team organizationally and finding funding that fits what you're trying to do. We've heard bids and TIFs and tax incentives and all sorts of tools that can get you there, but what's most appropriate for what you're trying to do? And then being able to manage and sustain and measure that success so that we can build into Teresa's report that says, look at what all those great districts in Colorado have done. Look at how much we've risen property taxes or how many new creatives have come here. So we've set out some bold goals. These trainings are all going to be done free to all our districts in the program. Y'all are invited to participate for a small fee. We'll make sure you get the marketing as well. But it should be really great and a great way to help support the districts. We also announced earlier today that we've got a great partnership going with Esri, and some of you might know Esri if you know about GIS. And so Esri has a great tool, the ArcGIS system that does creative story mapping, and it's a really easy to use tool that makes sort of mapping and measuring data and measuring trends and telling your unique district story accessible. It's essentially a drag and drop tool. You have a database of information, you drop it in, you add pictures, you add stories, you add video, you add social media, and suddenly you have a phenomenal tool to tell the story of our creative districts. We're really excited that through a partnership with Esri, we're going to be able to offer this free to all the districts in our program. And at a statewide level, we'll also be able to look at a whole state at the impact that all of our districts are having throughout Colorado and be able to report that back. So it should be a phenomenal tool that grows over the next few years. Just a couple other important days for your calendar in case you're interested. Our trainings and convenings, as Maryo said, continue on through this year, and we have some great things at Creative Industry Summit in April in Pueblo. Mapping creative communities, very well tied into our mapping with Esri that we're launching, and a conference later this year with Downtown Colorado Inc. So we're just looking to really build and sustain our programming, and again, push the districts forward and give them the tools they need to be successful in managing place. So thank you.